Hello, BlizzCon! All right, who's excited about Nova Covert Ops? Did you guys catch that announcement? Yeah? Excellent. Well, we are here today to tell you guys about the future of StarCraft 2. My name is Tim Morton. I'm the lead producer on StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. I'm going to introduce you guys to my fellow panelists up here. So, this is Jason Huck, who leads up the campaign design. We have any campaign players out there? Do you guys like the campaign? All right. Excellent. Valerie Rotros, who is a writer on StarCraft 2, and Valerie is writing the story for Nova Covert Ops. So, welcome to Valerie. Do we have any PvP players out there? All right, David Kim, our lead multiplayer designer. And on this end, Matt Morris is the lead for story mode, so everything that you do in between the missions, and also our new co-op missions mode that's out here playable on the floor. All right, so we are going to talk about what is coming after Legacy of the Void. How are we going to fill the void? Sorry. So the first piece of news to share with you guys that we are all super excited about is that development is continuing on StarCraft 2. Everybody who is here on stage with me today and the rest of the dev team is going to keep supporting StarCraft 2 and keep working on it. But we're going to give you some more information on what that means. That means more content, like Nova Covert Ops that got announced today in the opening ceremonies. That means more features that we're going to continue to add over the course of the year to StarCraft 2. Now, some of the content that I'm going to talk about today will be free content. Some of the content that I'm going to talk about today will be paid content. But I want you guys to know that we are super excited to keep working on StarCraft 2. So, micro content. I'm going to drill down a little bit on what this means. This is some content that's going to start coming online after Nova Covert Ops starts to come out. But we are working on some other types of content besides mission packs. We're working on the mission packs as well, and we're very excited to bring those to you. We are working on more co-op missions content that Matt is going to talk about. And we're working on more multiplayer content that David's going to talk about with you today. Okay, so micro content, what does that mean? Unit skins. All right, so to be totally honest with you guys, we have been so busy working on Legacy of the Void that we haven't really fleshed out our plans on exactly what skins we're going to do. So what I'm showing you right now, that is the Purifier Colossus skin that's included in the Collector's Edition. But just to give you a little sense of what skins can look like, this is the Purifier Adept now from Collector's Edition. And there's also going to be a turnaround on that Colossus. But unit skins are an opportunity for you to choose a different look for your units in StarCraft 2. We do it on a unit-by-unit basis, and we've got some work to do still to really make that interface streamlined and to give you good choices for how you use unit skins. But we are going to do more of them. What's in the Collector's Edition is just the beginning. Voice packs. Voice packs are something that we have seen requested very often. The idea here is that you will have an opportunity to replace the in-game advisor with the voice of a different StarCraft character. This guy is somebody we hear a lot of requests for. And this is what he might sound like if you used him as a voice.
Mineral quantity insufficient. Allies base under assault.
All right, so we are already working on getting some voiceover to create these voice packs, but we do still have more work to do to create the interface. So this is content that will come after the Nova mission packs start out. One area that I haven't touched on yet that I do want to touch on today is StarCraft 2 Arcade. Arcade is the part of the game where you get to experience content created by other users. There's also some content in there created by Blizzard. We're going to keep adding features to StarCraft Arcade. Again, we've been super busy working on Legacy of the Void, and we did a little bit of work already in terms of new user interface for Arcade, but we want to keep making that better. Right now, there is a contest going on called Rock the Cabinet. That contest is an opportunity for content creators to make content using the Warcraft 3 assets that we released for the StarCraft 2 engine. That contest, it's going to wrap up next month, but we're super excited to see what kind of content comes out of the community, and we're going to keep doing these contests. Finally, we are working towards enabling our first paid content in Arcade, and this is an opportunity for content creators who have made really great content to make some money off of that content in the community. We don't yet have a specific timeline for this, but I can tell you a little bit about our approach. What we're going to do is work with specific content creators. So it's not really going to be a full-on app store out of the gate. We're going to take a very curated approach. We're going to talk to content creators who already are working on content, who have a track record and ability to deliver something great to you guys. And we're going to figure out how to set that content up so that it can become available paid in the StarCraft Arcade. So that's a goal that we are working towards, and we'll be excited to share some more details on that as we get further along. All right, I know you guys want to hear more about Nova Covert Ops, so I'm going to pass it over to Jason Huck, lead game designer.
Intaro Tassadar, BlizzCon. Had to get it in my Protoss shout there. I mean, we're right on the cusp of Legacy of the Void coming out. So you might be wondering, what are mission packs? You know, when we came to look at about the future of StarCraft 2, it just seemed natural to us that we're going to want to add more stories to this universe and talk about other characters that everyone loves. And of course, Nova Covert Ops. Why not? You know, Nova is awesome. So the mission packs are basically in a different format than our usual campaigns. So these are going to be 9 mission story arc here that will be told over the course of 3 packs. So the first one coming early next year. And if you didn't see this at the opening ceremony, you missed the teaser trailer there, we thought we'd show it again and for everyone to check it out again. So to quote one of my favorite StarCraft 2 units, StarCraft Unit 2, you know, when I am playing StarCraft 2 and I see a world that's untouched by war, a world of innocence, a world with lush forests and clean streams, I really just want to nuke the crap out of it. And with Nova, you're going to get to do that. I mean, this is a character that is a fan favorite. We love her, and so it just seemed natural to us to have her as the first character that we talk about in these mission packs. So let's talk a little bit about this in particular. So much like Kerrigan was controllable in Heart of the Swarm in all those missions, Nova also will be playable. So you'll lead her and her Black Ops forces through these missions. And we'll have like these iconic Terran units that you all know and love, like the Siege Tank and the Marine. But they're going to have a little twists. They're going to have some really cool like Black Ops technology. So you might have like hover siege tanks or Marines with like a stim that actually heals them when they use it. So who needs a medic anymore? You just stim your Marines and they keep going. So Nova will undertake these Black Ops missions for Valerian and the Dominion. She gets this cool new ship that you'll get to explore. And we're really hard at work on all these missions right now, so unfortunately I don't have anything to show you, but we're rest assured you will nuke the crap out of them. Now, of course, with all our sort of systems that we add to the campaign, this is a really, really rough UI mock-up, so this is obviously not how it's going to look when we release it. But this is an equipment system, and this is something that allows you to kind of kit out Nova in various different loadouts. So she has a helmet or goggles. She has a different suit. She could have a different weapon and different gadgets. So we can give her maybe a different type of grenade, or we can give her a different gun. Instead of her C-28 canister rifle, she can get like a shotgun if it's time to go loud or something. She's experimenting with like a sword even, So, and then of course, with all of our campaign experiences, we're gonna have some really sweet cutscenes that go tell the story of Nova and the Black Ops missions. So, to talk more about that, I'm going to hand it off to Valerie, and she's going to give you a little bit of a history of what's going on with Nova and the Dominion after Legacy of the Void.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out today. I am super excited to tell you more about what's going on here in the Terran Dominion. So these Nova mission packs will take place after the end of Legacy of the Void. That concludes with some epilogue missions that push the timeline ahead a few years, and Nova Covert Ops will be even later after that. At this point, the Terran Dominion consists of a war-torn people. They have seen a lot over these past few years. There have been wars, civil wars, insurrections, the Zerg, you name it. At this point, people are ready for peace. But what they do in that peacetime is really the question they face right now. Some people are eager to make sure that they're ready. If any alien forces come back, they want to make sure that they have the security they need, the weapons they need to stay safe. While others are more interested in ensuring that the government takes a more progressive, egalitarian direction under Emperor Valerian. Valerian is a much more fair and just ruler than his father Arcturus ever was. And, he was raised by his mother in exile. He was raised with those beliefs that freedom and liberty are basic human rights that everyone deserves. To this end, he opens up a lot of civil liberties to the people. He opens up freedom to the press. And this seems like a great idea, right? Why would the press not be free? That would be terrible. But unfortunately, there are some ramifications to that hit him a little harder than he expects. His enemies use these freedoms to open up conversations about his weaknesses as a leader. And the criticism is more intense than he anticipated. Because of that, this price of power is becoming a struggle for him to continue the legitimacy of his reign. A reign as emperor in a government he wants to be progressive and fair. He begins to worry that his enemies are not just speaking out against him, but also forming secret alliances behind his back. The foremost of these is the Defenders of Man. Now, publicly, the Defenders of Man argue for the security of humanity. They are interested in protecting people from alien threats. Seems like a very logical, smart decision after, the recent events where the Swarm walked through the streets of Augustgrad. So the Defenders of Man have been gaining ground. More and more people flock to their side and listen to their message. But there's something else going on here behind the scenes. Nova, in that trailer you just saw, has woken up in a facility owned by the Defenders of Man. She doesn't know why she's there or what's going on. And this is a major concern as well for the Dominion. Her disappearance as their best ghost is a top priority situation. They need to find out what's going on there. And Nova will be doing just that as well. She needs to learn more about the Defenders of Man, what they've been planning, and what's next. And now we're going to switch gears to take a look at multiplayer features with David Kim.
So before we talk about the specifics of what we're trying to do next year in terms of multiplayer features, I want to talk a little bit about how we have been collaborating with you guys all throughout the development of Legacy of the Void, and we believe that has been so successful in terms of making Legacy of the Void as best as it could be before the release of the game. So I'd like to point out none of these features that we're talking about today, implementation hasn't started yet. We're still on the design phases only, so if you had thoughts and feedback, it'll be great to work together with you guys on all these features as well. So the first thing that we'll start working on is ladder revamp. This will be right after the release of Legacy of the Void. This will be our main focus. And we'll be going into the exact specifics and details of what we're planning so far in the multiplayer panel today at 4:30. So if you're interested in that, please check out that panel. But for now, I just want to point out that our main goal is to keep the good parts of the current system and address these three elements, which is having more meaningful ranks, more accuracy with the system, as well as more transparency. And the reason for this is because we really want to fulfill on the ranked play experience specifically in StarCraft 2. And what I mean by that is we want to have the most competitive and most accurate type of system to kind of go with the game. So on the tournament side, it's a little weird, but we're planning on Archon mode tournaments and 2v2 tournaments. So right now we have the 1v1 experience represented in the automated tournament system for the release of Legacy of the Void. So the competitive side is very well represented, but we wanted to take a step further into automated tournaments system as a whole, and we wanted to make it a little bit more of a teamwork oriented and a bit more of a social experience, and that's why we're trying to add these two formats into the system as well. The next thing is separate MMR per race in unranked play. We know that many of you have asked for this feature, and we do also agree that the player experience will be a lot better if you have the ability to check out, say I'm a Protoss player, that's my main race, but I'm kind of curious what my rank is as Zerg or Terran. Giving the players opportunity to do that, I think, is a good thing. But the only thing that we're working on here is, are we going to have separate MMR per race in ranked alone or also in unranked? And the answer to that question is a little bit difficult because the more MMRs we have per player, less good the matchmaking can potentially become. So depending on how our bootstrapping process goes and things like that, we'll make the right call, but please let us know your thoughts. And finally, for the multiplayer side, obviously we're going to have updates as needed, like we did in Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm. And what I mean by that is map updates every season, balanced test maps and balanced patches every season as needed as well. But the more important thing that I want to talk about is exploring big changes. So unlike Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm, we want to explore things like major redesigns to existing units when needed, or even systems, and potentially adding new units to the game to make the game feeling more fresh. And as you guys know from Wings of Liberty or Heart of the Swarm, we had some design issues with a couple units like the Swarm Host or the Broodlord Infestor combination in Wings of Liberty. So we want to be a lot quicker to react to those kind of situations, is why we have this goal. And on top of that, say 1 or 2 years have passed after the release of Legacy of the Void, the game might be a little stale because the strategies have been kind of figured out. Everyone's doing the same sort of things on the ladder and in tournaments and so on. We want to keep the options open in terms of adding new units so that we can keep the game feeling more fresh. So like I talked about a little bit before, we did this whole process of community collaboration all throughout the course of the beta. And even after the release of Legacy of the Void, we would like to continue working together with you so that we can make these new designs or potentially new units coming into the game at a later stage as best as we can. And now Matt Morris, our lead campaign designer, will talk to us about the updates coming next year for co-op missions. Thank you.
All right, how are you guys doing? My name is Matt Morris, and today I'm going to talk about co-op missions. Now, if you're hearing the words co-op missions for the first time, that's because we've recently changed the name from Allied Commanders to co-op missions. If you're hearing allied commanders and co-op missions for the first time, I have a quick brief summary as to this exciting new cooperative mode that's coming to StarCraft 2 for the very first time. So what is co-op missions? This is where you're going to play cooperatively with a friend. You're both going to battle the computer on campaign-style missions. Now, this isn't campaign. This is an entirely different mode. But what we've done is we've taken over some of the more memorable mechanics and objectives that you've seen in our campaigns, and we brought them over to co-op missions so that you could have that same experience with your friend. And you'll both get a chance to choose a commander from one of our 3 campaigns. Now, each commander plays a little bit differently. They have a unique set of units, abilities, and upgrades. This isn't like Heroes. This is still an RTS. You're still building a base and troops, but each one of these guys is absolutely amazing. If you guys haven't seen it, the demo station over here has all the co-op missions and the commanders. We have 6 commanders. We have Jim Raynor, we have Kerrigan and Artanis, and we have Swan from Wings of Liberty, and Zagara from Heart of the Swarm. And we got this new commander. You're going to learn a lot more about her in the Legacy of the Void in a couple days. Her name is Vorazun. She is awesome. But the reason why I'm standing here today is to let everybody know that as this game goes live, we plan to continue to support co-op missions as we move forward. One of the ways we want to do this is we want to continue to make more co-op missions. In fact, we already have a mission that's almost ready to launch. Once the game goes live, it'll be shortly thereafter. It's a mission that you will have seen in the Legacy of the Void campaign. It's a capture point mission. And we felt the mechanics of this mission fits perfect for a cooperative environment, because we're going to require both players working together to capture these points. But more importantly, you're going to have to communicate with your ally as to how to prevent the AI from recapturing them. Now I have a little video to show you what this looks like in game.
Enemy forces are contesting the objective. Eliminate them to capture it. Secured a main objective.
All right, this area is ours.
So as we move forward, one of the most important things that we want to do when we're building these missions is that we want to build missions that you guys want to play on. I highly encourage you guys to be very active on the Battle.net forums, go to Reddit, going to these places that you like to read about StarCraft 2. Let us know what you like and don't like, because we really want to build these missions for missions that you guys want to play on. Now, one of the other ways we plan on supporting this mode is we want to add more co-op commanders. I've mentioned the 6, but today at BlizzCon we're announcing our 7th commander. He's a Protoss commander. His name is Faye Smith Karax. He works in a room called the Solar Core. And what the Solar Core is this is the room that powers the Spear of Verdun, all the weapon systems and the defense systems. And that's what's going to make him different than the other Protoss commanders. He's going to be all about these call downs from the Spear of Verdun. Now, all the Protoss commanders do have call downs, and they all have unique Spear of Verdun powers. But what really makes Karax different is he's going to be able to use it more frequently, the more powerful. In fact, in the mission itself, you're going to actually upgrade your Spear of Verdun. You can make these powers stronger as you start playing the missions. Now, I got a couple of videos to show you to illustrate some of these amazing powers that Karax has. Now, this first one is called Solar Lance. And what's awesome about this is that the player's going to have the ability to paint a line onto the mission and just do terrible amounts of damage to anything in there. Let's take a look.
Has been destroyed.
Now that is how you do it.
Now, one of these next abilities I'm going to show you, it kind of shows that he has more than just these offensive weapons. Now, all the Protosses, you know, have a chrono boost that you can single target any structure and make that structure train units faster. Karax has an ability called Super Chrono. And when he activates this, all your production facilities start going in overtime. And it's not just at chrono boost speeds, it's actually much, much faster. So I got this video to kind of show you. So this is Karak space right here, and you can see all the gateways and the cybernetics core and the forge. Everything's working overtime to produce a lot of troops. Really powerful. But most importantly, this also impacts your allies. So you can see how important it is to have Karaks on your team. Now I got one last video to show you. Now this is Karax's ultimate ability. Now this thing is awesome. It's called Purifier Beam. What's really cool about this is it leaves a persistent beam on the mission for a pretty long time. But the real fun part is as you deploy it, the player actually gets to control it and move it around. So as the enemy's trying to escape, you could just run them over with this thing. Take a look. I don't know if you can see it, but I think that thing had like 56 kills on that. So that's it for co-op missions. You guys could start lining up. I don't know where the person is going to have the microphone, but you guys can start answering questions. But before I sit down, I do want to remind everyone that if you've never picked up Wings of Liberty or Heart of the Swarm, or if you're new to RTSs, there's no better time to get into StarCraft 2 now than with Legacy of the Void. It's a standalone product. We have an amazing new campaign. We've got amazing new multiplayer features, new units. We got automated tournaments. We got Archon mode. And now we have a cooperative mode for you and your friends to play together and have that campaign experience. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Hi, my question's for the writer. How many of the themes of this mission pack and how much of what you're doing with the Nova story is from StarCraft Ghost, the Cancel project? Is any of it themes, maybe plot elements, anything that happens, or how much of it is from that?
So, as with everything that's been written for Nova, it informs her character and it's part of who she is. But the events of Ghost actually took place earlier in the timeline. So this is something that's happening much later, after the events of Legacy of the Void. So that Ghost storyline was featured in the novel Spectres. So that is still part of her history and what she's been through, but it is a new adventure going forward with Nova.
Thanks.
This is a question about co-op missions. So I think that it's really cool you're adding it. And from Diablo, there's this like eternal rift level concept. And I was thinking, in the world of hardcore players that don't want to play against other players, it's interesting if those co-op missions would have an unlimited level, and if we could go and have a ladder system and all that. And I don't know if you guys thought about it or if it's a good concept, but I think it would be really interesting to go and choose your commander and figure out the best strategies and all that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. As we move forward with co-op missions, this is obviously something new to StarCraft 2. And so we've had a lot of those discussions. We want to know what it's going to happen once you max out your commander at the higher difficulties. Right now what we have is at the highest difficulty, we find that it's super challenging, right? So there's a lot of fun there. But as we move forward, we're looking at these different ideas as to really embrace for the players are really hardcore, but also still make it very accessible. Because, this is an area we expect a lot of people from campaign will come over. Multiplayer can be very intimidating, right? So we want to make this kind of a place for them, but we also recognize that this is a lot of fun for the hardcore fans too. So we like a lot of those ideas, and those are things we are talking about.
Thank you.
So when I got StarCraft 2, I was really super excited to make my own map. And when I got in, I found a system that was great, had all sorts of features in it, but the field names and how to do things were super complicated and not explained anywhere. What have you done to help resolve that?
We do have an effort underway right now to author some more content to help content creators. We're also looking at ways that we can continue to improve the editor interface and to add features to Arcade. So always appreciate feedback, and we definitely are working towards making that a better experience.
Thank you.
I'm wondering how the race-based matchmaking system is going to treat random players.
So it's not final yet, but our current thought is the random will be decided before you get into a match. Like the system would know, and then it'll choose that MMR to matchmake against the correct player. So what's kind of interesting about this is on the ladder, maybe you won't have like a random rank, right? Maybe you might have all 3 ranks separately, but your race will still be displayed as random. But if you had better thoughts than that, then we're definitely welcome to hearing any feedback, both on the idea that we have currently, or it could be something else too, right? Because nothing has been decided yet. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. Oh. Hi. So my question relates to story and to specifically factions from StarCraft and Brood War and even up to Heart of the Swarm. So are we going to see the return of factions like the UAD, like the Cerberus Recon Squad from the very first game, even the demo missions? Are we even going to see the Umojans or the Kelmorians eventually? And will they have new units to that? With like we saw in the campaigns.
We definitely love those factions as well, and as to what they're up to, we haven't stated that yet. We're not planning on having them featured in the Nova covert ops missions, but it is definitely something we could explore in the future.
Thank you.
Howdy. This would be for whomever it concern. I noticed in one of the first slides you said paid content. Now, recently another developer tried to do this with a game they released, and it had a massive community backlash. How do you feel that you can learn from this, and it will, going forward, not alienate the player base by having some content free, some content behind a paywall, so to speak?
Yeah, we have a few core values that we're developing around StarCraft Arcade, but I think the first one is we have no intention to take content that was previously free and make you have to pay for it. I think anything that we plan to introduce through StarCraft Arcade is intended to be new content. The other thing I'll say is that this isn't content that's just going to modify how you play StarCraft. The kinds of things that we're looking at in StarCraft Arcade are really completely new games using the assets and tools that we provide through StarCraft 2 Arcade. So we really feel like this is a distinct individual situation separate from anything else that's been done. And we also feel like it's super important for us as Blizzard to provide a way for content creators to get rewarded for the great work that they do. So this really is about supporting that community. It's not about anything else.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, this one's for David. Since the beta dropped, you guys had an unprecedented interaction with the community. We've been very appreciative of it. I would like to know 2 things. One, did you learn anything new about the community you serve? And did those interactions change the way you approach any part of your development for the future?
So I guess the most important thing was through working together with our community, we were able to make Legacy of the Void much better than we expected, which is very cool. Because originally when we started this process, we were just trying to increase the positivity, the perception around StarCraft 2, things like that. But as we explored more and more, we realized, man, there's so many smart people out there that can actually make good ideas for the game. So I guess for your second question, then obviously what we learned and what we learned is this is a very good thing, and we need to continue doing more of it but we're still new to this, so we still have to improve this process. But we definitely want to do more as we go forward after the launch release of Legacy of the Void.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey everyone. First, I want to say thanks for all the work you've done. I really love StarCraft, and looking forward to the changes that are coming up. So my question is, I got mainly into StarCraft from Husky, and one of the things that he implemented before he stopped making as much content was Imba League. And it's kind of the equivalent of, I think, Tavern Brawl and Hearthstone, where it has like unique rules for that week or that season or whatever you want to call it. I think it would be a pretty interesting game mode. I'm not sure if you've heard it. Do you have any thoughts on that type of thing? You can use maybe your laddered rank to go against someone of similar skill, but still have like just a silly game or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, but I think the main difference compared to Hearthstone and our game is we have the arcade, which has a lot of those maps that you're talking about. But on top of that, I think with our new automated tournaments feature, we can do something fun, like maybe we can do like at different intervals. Maybe today is only on this specific arcade type of map tournaments, right? So, and the reason for that, I think, is because if we have too many matchmaking pools on the ladder, the player experience might not be so great. But if we do it using the automated tournament system, that might be a good thing. So it's something that we're talking about. We don't have specific plans yet, but we'll definitely discuss this some more.
Thank you.
Hi. First of all, excuse my lousy English. I'm not from around. There are a lot of people reviving using the powerful editor from StarCraft 2, reviving the classic missions of StarCraft 1. Have you ever thought about remastering StarCraft 1 with achievements, Battle.net, and etc., etc.?
It's feedback that we've heard. I think we've been so busy just getting Legacy of the Void done that we haven't had a chance to really think about what other bigger projects we might explore. But we really appreciate the feedback, and I think it's something we can consider. So,
thank you.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for making the game and everything. So I have a question about the arcade mode. Whenever I log on to StarCraft, I have to choose between arcade and multiplayer, that kind of stuff. I don't really want to choose that. Do you think it makes sense to move some of the appropriate arcade games to mobile so I can play them elsewhere?
it's a pretty big technology task to get our engine ported over to work on mobile platforms. It's something that we have talked about as being really advantageous for content creators to be able to get their content onto other platforms than PC. So we do talk about it internally, but it's a lot of work. So I don't think it's something we can do in the near term.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my question is about the arcade. I find an arcade game I really like, and I'm all like, what else has he made? And I can't figure that out too easily. Is there like any thoughts about like a creator page? Like you click the guy's name who created the map, and it takes you to his page, and it's like, hey, he made all these other games, and these are all the ratings on them, and these are his most popular, this is your favorites, these are the news he's doing on the games. Anything like that?
Those sound like things that really would add a lot to arcade. We're doing analysis now to figure out how can we continue to improve that interface. And one example of a feature that we hear requested a lot is the ability to add custom descriptions to lobbies, kind of like the Warcraft 3 days. You know, there's pros and cons to doing that. I think there's a lot of noise that comes out of that. But we are doing a lot of brainstorming right now, so I think those are great suggestions, and we'll factor those in as we talk about it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, this is for the entire dev team. The question, I was wondering if, could you just move it a bit away? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I was wondering if, would you consider adding new races moving on, not in StarCraft 2, but StarCraft 3 as like a new way to innovate the game? That's basically it.
I mean, we're just so focused on, you know, what we're working on right now that we haven't even really begun to think about a StarCraft 3. But anything is on the table for that when that time comes.
Thank you.
The score screen has a lot of useful information for players to interpret the progress of their games, like the workers active graph, the army value graph. Are there any thoughts to expand the data that's presented to players post-game?
I think that really depends on like the esports side of things as well as our side. So it's something that we can discuss and see if there's a lot of improvements that we can do on that side, because actual implementation shouldn't be too hard on that area. So we'll definitely bring it up and discuss it. And thank you for streaming so much during Legacy of the Void beta. We really enjoyed it.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Igor and I'm looking weird. But I've been playing every Blizzard game except StarCraft 2. And the question is, isn't it too late to catch up and start playing? I mean, the final chapter of Part 2 is gonna come out soon and a lot of stuff happened already. Isn't it too late to start playing?
I'll say it's never too late to start playing. We really did a lot of work for Legacy of the Void to make this a good entry point for StarCraft 2. We've got new tutorials, we've got these cooperative missions, we've got Archon mode. This is a great time to come into the game, and I think our hope is that many people who might have been holding off to the moment where the whole story is ready to be consumed will come in now. But I don't know, anybody else want to jump in?
And if you had any like questions about like where to get started, or if you're stuck in some points, things like that, if you go to like StarCraft Reddit, that community has been like very great at helping new players out. So definitely utilize that too.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my question is mostly focused on multiplayer for Mr. Kim, I guess. You mentioned that you're ready to do huge changes for the multiplayer design, for units, removing units even, but is there anything that is out of the question? Is there maybe the economy model or anything that you've decided there's no way you're changing?
So there's like two parts to it, I think. The first part is we'll do redesigns as we need to if something is broken, right? So like the swarm hosts in Heart of the Swarm or Broodlord Infestor and Wings of Liberty are, I think, good examples of that. And second is if there comes a time where the game becomes a little stale, then we'll explore mixing things up. And in that scenario, I think anything is possible, including the stuff that you mentioned.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
First, I'd like to say thank you, Jason, for representing the Zerg up there. Also, are there plans for any like official Blizzard mods coming out? Specifically, like I want to play Brood War or Warcraft 3 with the StarCraft 2 engine.
These are all things that we've discussed, and it's potential for maybe next year if we decide we really want to go that way. But it's really it's all to see, what ends up coming in the future. So
yeah, I'll jump in and just add, I think we're so excited just to continue working on StarCraft 2 and to start having an opportunity to think about things beyond Legacy of the Void. So we feel like we've been so sort of tunnel visioned on getting this one done that there are these great ideas floating out there, and we've heard multiple over the course of this panel. So we really will put more thought into that stuff, and I think we'd be excited to explore those too. So.
That's awesome. I mean, we already got the Warcraft assets. Let's do it.
Hello. So first of all, I'm a huge fan of StarCraft. I played since I was a little kid, and I was wondering about your cancelled StarCraft Ghost project. Is it dead and buried, or are you going to continue it?
At this point in time, there are no plans to continue with StarCraft Ghost. This team really has been focused on StarCraft 2, the RTS, so yeah, we're not even that close to that particular project, though we're definitely aware of the history there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hello, this is a question for David. So I know there's been a lot of tweaking about the Adapt and the Zealot, but it seems like the consensus is still, why make a Zealot when I can just make an Adapt? What can you do to make either the Adept less powerful or the Zealot more powerful?
So right now, we think there is a bit of a clear distinction, more so than we had right when the adept was first introduced. For example, if you're harassing using your Warp Prism, obviously the Zealot is stronger if you're trying to take out his hatchery versus if you're just trying to harass the worker line, the adept is better. And in combat, the charge has its benefits compared to like the Psionics transfer of the adept is better against like harassment and things like that. So we think the differentiation is a little bit better, but like you said, they do overlap a little bit still, and some of that I think is it's just natural when we add a core unit to a race, right? Like all these core roles were filled by 2 units, the Zealot and the Stalker before. We added a third. Obviously, this guy has to kind of take from one of these 2 units, right? So we felt like because the Stalker is more interesting with Blink Micro, there's a lot more like fun stuff that players can do with it compared to the Zealot is mostly just a move. So we wanted to take a little bit from the Zealot more so than the Stalker.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
This one's for Davey. I was wondering about automated tournaments. They're really, really cool. I played a few in the beta. But I wanted to know, are you guys going to expand on them? I saw, Archon in 2 vs 2 tournaments. Do you think on like an Archon 2 vs 2 automated tournament, so it'd be 4 vs 4 in a way?
So the 2v2 and Archon mode are the next things that we want to do. And then depending on how that goes and depending on the demand for other things, maybe we can explore things like 4v4 like you said, or like someone else just mentioned, maybe we can explore having tournaments in some arcade maps and things like that, right? But anything's possible. But for now, we're focusing on Archon mode tournaments and 2v2 tournaments.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, this question's multiplayer related, so for David Kim then. Do you think that we saw problems in Wings of Liberty about units not being very relevant or not used, like the carrier we didn't see very much in Wings of Liberty, as well as Heart of the Swarm? Do you think that like implementing new units in Legacy of the Void, such as the Liberator, we don't see the Siege Tank, for instance, a lot in TVZ anymore because the Widowmine kind of did a lot to replace that in a more effective way. And now we're seeing Siege Tanks being picked up by Medivacs to make them more relevant. Do you think units like the Liberator might take away from the Siege Tank in its role, or the Cyclone might take away from the Thor kind of being a core element for anti-air for Terran? Like, I guess the question's like, do you think a lot of the new units might be taking away too much from units that we've already had trouble finding relevance in?
So when new units are added, obviously it's going to take from old, because players can only do so many strategies per matchup, right? So it's going to take some of it. But I think our goal is to not have every single unit in the game used in equal numbers, but more so if the units that are really fun to play with and fun to watch, things like that, are used and in a good number of diversity, I think that's the most important for us.
Okay, but one more question then on that. Do you think it's more important that units are fun to play or fun to watch?
We think both are important for StarCraft 2 because it's a game that everyone plays for fun, but at the same time, it's such a huge esport also, right? Especially on the multiplayer side. So I think both are equally important.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, so compared to other developers, Blizzard's honestly not that great about pushing news and results and previews on the launcher. So are you looking into improving how you handle coverage and how you handle getting the news out? Because the launcher is really important for the casual players to see that, hey, there's something going on, there's a big tournament with good players. So what are you doing to improve that?
There are 2 aspects to answering that question. I think the first is the Battle.net launcher. And there is a dedicated team that works on the Battle.net launcher that has plans to continue improving it throughout 2016. So I think you will see some improvements there. But the other aspect is in-game exposure. And we've recently released an updated user interface for StarCraft 2 with the 3.0 patch. So that's live right now. That landing page is fairly basic right now, but we do plan to continue adding some improvements there. And we're thinking a lot about how can we expose things like upcoming matches? How can we really drive viewership both for esports and excitement around new features and new content that we have coming in the game?
Follow-up question to that. So do you think will there ever be a point where we can just like jump in and jump out of like tournament matches to view it? Because like I think Dota does that. You can just jump into the tournament and just watch the replay, and you have all the tools to like see different stats and things like that. So do you think you're gonna support that in the future?
Mass spectating is something that we're exploring what it would take to implement from a server infrastructure perspective, and we feel like it would be a great feature to add. We just haven't done enough tech development to really speak confidently about what's involved in executing.
Okay, thank you.
My question is about a multiplayer game. Since Legacy of the Void add more units in the game and they need micro control for players to win the game. So do you think Legacy of the Void is becoming more unfriendly to new players? And will you think about any other things to do to make new players to enjoy the multiplayer games?
Yeah, so we've actually made changes to the training mode so that it's a little easier for brand new players to get into multiplayer. But on top of that, I think Archon mode is a great replacement to 1v1, especially if you're new. If you have friends, or you can make new friends who are good at StarCraft 2, who want to kind of like mentor you or teach you how to play and things like that, it's a great tool for that. And as far as the 1v1 experience goes, because we have the matchmaker working pretty well in our game, if you are at like a silver level, you're only running into other silver level players who also can't do all these pro level micros. So we believe all these things combined kind of help out the new player in that sense.
Thank you.
Hi guys, thanks for working on such an awesome game. Can't wait to dig into it. But something different this year that's different about previous years is that there isn't a next game announced yet. So can you please put us all at ease and say that there's something on the roadmap when it comes to a future RTS StarCraft release?
Well, I think what I can say is that this team loves RTS and that we plan to continue building games for a long time. What we don't know is what that next game is going to be. So I think that's an area where getting feedback from you guys and from the player base at large will really help us as we start to think about what are we going to work on next.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my question's about mission paths. I think they're a really great idea, getting to see more of the story in between games than we have in the past. My question specifically is about using them as a vehicle to only move the timeline forward, or will there be some that maybe go back and look at some of the StarCraft history, like seeing the Protoss in their heyday or something like that?
Yeah, totally. That's an awesome idea. You know, like we could totally explore that space if we wanted to. In this case, we just decided to go, you know, after Void. So,
thank you.
Hey, quick question about matchmaking, actually. So there's Archon versus Archon. You have to do basic 2v2 versus 2v2. Is it possible or even viable to do Archon versus 1v1? So if I wanted to play against two people, is that something that the system can handle right now?
So that's something we wanted to do, but our worry was, would people think that's super unfair? Like I didn't want to match against an Archon as 1v1 and so on, right? So if a lot of the players, if majority of the players turn off, if you give that option to turn it off, our worry is putting that into the game, majority of the people turn it off, like no one uses it and things like that. And we actually asked our community and the responses weren't super positive that time, but maybe it's changed and it's really up to you guys. And if you guys really want that feature, we can definitely discuss it again internally.
All right, thanks.
Hey, this is basically for David Kim, and are you satisfied with the balance on a multiplayer at the moment, especially TVP, for the early game at least, the adepts?
For Legacy of the Void, we don't feel super confident, obviously because, especially because the top players haven't played Legacy of the Void a lot yet, so we don't really know what happens at the top level, but we are fairly happy with across the other different skill levels, because like we mentioned in one of our weekly posts too, the stats are like actually looking much better than it did at the start of the beta or even during mid-beta. So we will have to release the game to know for certain, but on the latter side, we feel pretty confident. on the pro level side, we don't feel super confident, but we'll see and we'll react as we go.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a really big Protoss fan, so thank you for making this game. I feel like I've been waiting for it since 1998. When we first started talking about StarCraft 2, one of the things that was discussed was replacing the carrier with, I think it was the Tempest at the time, and then you went back on that and decided to keep it as the carrier. Then when Heart of the Swarm was coming out, I think there was discussion of removing the carrier because it was underused, and we went back on that, and then there was discussion of removing the mothership, and then that didn't happen. How do you, because there's a community kind of attachment to these units, and they're kind of iconic now, how do you think about balancing or removing these iconic units that players are emotionally invested in, even if they don't really seem to work out in the meta of the game?
So unit count is something that we really have to be careful of, because if there's too many units in the game, then the strategic element of trying to counter what the opponent is doing, things like that, can become a little bit muddy and complicated. So we do need a plan for it, especially if we're going to be adding new units going forward. So we have a lot of discussions on it, not a lot of good ideas yet. So if you guys had good ideas, it'll be great to hear what the best move is there.
So does that mean that removing those units is something that you would still be open to? Or?
Yes, we will definitely have to at some point, because how many units is too much, right? We don't know that answer yet. But there will come a time if we start adding new units to the game. And I know that other games are doing this. Like WoW has cleaned up a lot of the skills in their classes, for example. Hearthstone probably needs to explore this area as well, because the number of cards are getting bigger and bigger as time passes. So we'll see.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're almost out of time, so this will be our last question.
Hello. I love the idea of the new missions as well as co-op missions for the smaller bits of story, but eventually I do get tired of small bits and love, another expansion. Do you feel like on the current opinion of the dev team is to work on another trilogy a couple years down the line, or are you going to see more of a World of Warcraft approach of maybe a Brood War-esque expansion for the game?
Right now, all options are on the table. I think a lot will depend on the response that we get back from the Nova Covert Ops work that we're doing, from the new co-op missions and co-op commanders we release, from the multiplayer changes that happen over the course of the year ahead. Really, there's the possibility that we'll continue to support the game granularly like this. There's the possibility for whole new stuff in the future. A lot of it really just depends on what you guys tell us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and check out WCS today. Should be great. Thanks.
Thank you for attending the Future of StarCraft 2 panel. Up next, the World of Warcraft Cinematics, The Road to Legion panel.